Hi, everybody. Welcome to Innovation Nation today. For episode 10, I have a very special guest who's going to be joining us, not just for this episode, but also for the next one. We have two really great topics we're going to talk about. And Jon, if you can please give us an introduction, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm Jon Harris. I work with a company called Guidepost Solutions as the Director of Enterprise Solutions. A little bit about my background. I've been in the industry for about 15 years. Came up, actually, I guess my first entry into the quote unquote security industry was a couple of years in the US Army, then went to college, was a bouncer at a bar, so that kind of counts, and then was a security officer at my school at University of St. Thomas here in St. Paul, Minnesota. And kind of that was the start into like real physical security work, though I guess I didn't really know it at the time. Fast forward, I worked in guard services for a number of years and then got into security leadership for an aerospace and defense company where I spent a majority of my career, almost a decade with them. Did a stint in business development for a security technology manufacturer before coming to Guidepost. I've been here for about 2 years.
Awesome. And you have a very extensive background. So I do want to dig into some of that as we talk. And I think our prompt today is going to be really good because I'm sure you have a lot of different angles and experience, to this topic, right? Because you've sat on a lot of different seats of the bus. Real quick, though, if you can help us understand a little bit about what Guidepost does, what you do, what your daily life looks like. I personally know a lot about Guidepost, but I don't think that the listeners all know as much as I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Guidepost is a global security and compliance and technology consulting company, and so we have a various suite of services that we provide, from monitorships for compliance for large and small organizations, investigations, and kind of that side of the industry, and then the side that I reside on is the security technology consulting. So everything from designing systems to doing site assessments and some of that more like traditional architectural and design work to risk assessments and executive protection support and everything in between. My role is bringing all of that together for single solutions for typically, larger corporations and global companies where I help them develop a suite of services and capabilities and what I refer to as security operations as a service. So all those things I've said that Guidepost does, I kind of stand in front of that to the client and I'm the intermediary between developing those programs for them or seeing how we can make sense around insourcing, outsourcing, what they want to keep core to their business and what they may want us or some of our strategic partners to do on their behalf.
That's a great overview. And thank you for that because it ties really well into what we're going to talk about today. And, first off, just one tidbit, I have a lot of mentors in the industry who actually have either worked at Guidepost or still work there. And I'm just so glad that you're on today because we don't, I haven't had many consultants join me yet who sit like on your side of the table. And I know you sit really close to the end user, right? So I think it's going to be fun. And I'll let you, kind of give the intro on the topic, but I will just start by saying, with technology and how much is changing, and especially like today, right now, we're sitting here virtually and we're having a conversation through a camera, which is just crazy, right? Like typically you'd be in a studio, like recording together, whatever it is, or in person, right? And, the way we work with our end users is changing, right? The way that we service them, which leads us to our topic of customer service today in 2020 and in the future. So Jon, if you can kind of give us your perspective on that and we'll use that as a segue into our overarching theme.
Yeah, and even before we found ourselves in the uncharted territories of 2020 with pandemic and social unrest and all of this stuff that is distanced but connected us, as we found new ways to connect virtually, like what you talked about, Sarah. customer expectations were changing, have been changing. And as you noted, like, my lens into this is an interesting one, because I started out in the industry as a service provider in security officer services, trying to understand how to deliver a service to the client. I didn't know. I mean, I was freshly out of my undergrad, so I didn't know all the things I know now. I just finished up my MBA, and so I have a huge knowledge gap between what I thought I knew then and what I know now. But I still like had this concept of delivering exceptional service to the client. And as I moved into an end user role and moved up from kind of site level to division to reporting to the segment president, responsible for 5 different compliance organizations, there was a mind shift that took place over that period of time, where I started to talk to my compliance team about being a service organization and security as a service. Now, this is internal security, compliance, international trade compliance, government compliance, and us saying we provide a service to the business. And for my team, that was like revolutionary. They had never thought of it that way. And we'll kind of circle back to that concept. But then going into business development, where that was my first, quote unquote, customer facing role, right? Where I'm like selling. There's a story I like to tell, that when I was transitioning out of my trade director role and going into this business development role as an individual contributor, and it was by all part was asking me, like, are you sure you want to do this? You're going from here to here. And I'm like, well, it was a strategic play for me. I want to challenge myself, and I want to be customer facing. My boss at the time is saying, what did you think, what's your greatest challenge is going to be? And I said, well, I've never sold before. And he laughed at me and said, you've been selling me security for 5 years. You think you've done any of this if you didn't do a good sales job? And that was like the biggest confidence boost. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I have been. And kind of got me thinking, like, we're all at the end of the day salespeople in a different way, and we're all delivering value to a customer. And so now in my role, that really hits home with me around like delighting the customer and adding value and always trying to, find ways to be better. And kind of dive us into our discussion. We started talking about, when we met before, the challenge that I see in our industry is the focus on client acquisition more and more and more. So I used to sit in a room with other BD people, and they'd show us, we would look at the logos, right? And we'd be like, we need more logos. We got to go get more clients. And I'd be seeing in our wake the logos that we lost in the last 2 years. But it was never about client retention. It was always about client acquisition. And you got to have both. And, you have to cultivate the good ones you have and keep them growing and going, while still also getting more. I mean, that's how true growth happens. So I think that's kind of the good starting point, right? Like I just threw a lot, out there.
My brain's spinning because I have so many thoughts to share, but I want to hear, you're the guest. So I want to hear you keep sharing with us your thoughts, and then I'll share my thoughts after.
Yeah. So I think that's like, I see as a foundational challenge. And I don't know, I've really only ever worked as a security professional, worked in aerospace and defense, but but I work with our salespeople, and we worked on a lot of big programs. So like 787, big, airplanes. And it wasn't just about getting on them, meaning getting your content on that plane, but keeping it on there and keeping the customer happy, because those new big planes only come every 10 to 20 years, right? So so there was a lot of intentional focus on customer service and program management Yes, you wanted the new growth, but it was really drilled into our organization about how we focus on customer service. And our CEO and our business leadership would always talk about, customer first. And it was really employee and customer, right? Treat our people right, treat our customers exceptional. What I enjoy about the organization I work with now is that they share those same values. So it's really about, doing everything we can within our core values of being ethical and high integrity and the values that we hold dear, to help our customers succeed. I'll give you a great example. I have a client I work with, they called me last night. They're like, hey, we got a problem. Our legacy ERP system at one of our sites isn't working with our scanners. I know this has nothing to do with security, but can you help us? Now, I just so happen to have used that same legacy ERP system when I work at the aerospace company at one of our sites in North Carolina. So I said, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think I know some people who can help. So right there, and it took me maybe an hour to put the bat signal out and get in touch with people and really go that extra mile. And even if I didn't end up solving the problem, going that extra step and showing that I'm committed to success in whatever form it's necessary, I think goes a long way. As opposed to just saying, no, that's not security, can't help you. And for end users, that's a place that we often get into challenges with the business who, in my opinion, is our customer. When they ask us to do something and we say, no, that's not security's job. And one of the things that when I was an end user, I spent a lot of time reframing with my organization the concept of what was security's job. And I think we as an industry are in the midst of a phase change where we all need to take a look at what we think our job is, what the market wants or needs our job to be, and how we potentially close that gap. I think there is a gap there between what we feel that our obligation is, or where we are as an industry and where we can be, in order to really take off. And there's going to be folks, I think, that make that shift and really take off, and other organizations who continue to say, no, we just do this, right? We're in this place and we're comfortable here, and it's going to be an interesting even 1 year. I don't think it's like a 5-year horizon. It's like a 1-year horizon where I think you could have a lot of disruption in the market, a lot of consolidation as far as acquisition. Tumultuous times always drive up a lot of M&A. And I wouldn't be shocked to see a lot of shakeup, over the next 18 months.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, Jon. So I think overarching theme, obviously, that we're talking about is, how we service our customers and how we continue to do that, even when we are landing and expanding and growing. And once we land a customer, I was taught the concept of land expand. When I worked at JCI, which is a service provider, now I sit on more the OEM manufacturing side, which is, I'm even further from the customer now, quote unquote, but at the same time, almost closer, which I'll dive into a little bit later. But it was very interesting because my role, I sat on a few different roles at JCI, and I have a background in construction as well. And, it's interesting because for the first 2 years at JCI, I was doing owner direct sales. And so my expertise at the time were, I was focused on electrical and mechanical systems, and I was being trained to go to the end user. And I was sitting more with my service team, and we would sell service agreements and go out there and service what already existed, right? And so the way we were structured, we had the team to go and focus on the nurturing, and then we had the team that was focused to go land, right? And then quote expand. And then I shifted over to the Connected Technologies group, which was where we did all the large projects, which is where I started working super close with Guidepost. We were partnering early on jobs, like in the development phase or SD phase, right? And going in, talking vision with the end user, and then figuring out how we were going to get there. And it was so interesting because I almost feel like I was lucky because I got trained with the end user. And I got trained to think like, what am I going to do to bring value here? Like, I'm not here to get on and get off a job. And then when I shifted over to the construction world, luckily I was with people like yourselves where we were very value driven and we wanted the vision to get successfully done. Like we wanted this technology package that we were putting together to be done right. But then I started hanging out with a lot of the contractors. And I'm not going to talk down on contractors. Like my point isn't to say that, you know, it's bad, but the traditional model of construction that we're used to seeing, get on, get off a job, timeline, budget. And, you know, what's important to like the end user and the engineer and the architect is quite different than what's important to the GC, right? Or your electrical or your mechanical. And so it's very interesting because then I would take that mentality of owner, sales direct. I actually brought that to my contractors because I didn't just have to nurture like the end user and the consultant, but I said, oh, well, this is all I know. Yes, I'm going to go to their office and sit down and we're going to talk and hang out and be friends and we're going to actually solve problems together and not just get on and push product and get off a job, right? And like, it was very interesting because it allowed me to build not just a strong relationship with the end user, but with the contractor. And contractors weren't used to subs doing that frequently also.
Right.
Or sub.
Well, and I think you raised a great point about like the, you know, the ecosystem that we operate in and understanding, and it could differ by project, you know, engagement, definitely by client, is who is doing what. And if I have a electrical contractor who is coming in, running wire, you know, and you know, tapping it and saying, all right, that's where your readers are going to go, and that's their job. You know, there's a distinct beginning and end point there, right? So it's like, and I don't, you know, I don't have an expectation that they're sitting there and they come back and say, let me watch and make sure you put the readers on and they work white, and they, you know, but it's lovely when they circle back and say, hey, I just want to make sure like everything went good. Or I had a recent project for one of our, you know, key accounts, their headquarters building. It's a high-rise building in a downtown area. Electrical goes in first. They put everything in. Then the integrator goes there to do some stuff, and one of the wirings, you know, they said, hey, we can't do what we want. And they reached right out to the electrical contractor. They squared everything away. I'll be out tomorrow. I'll finish what I needed to do, or, you know, rework whatever it is I do. And they just worked it out together, like seamlessly, saying, this is how we're going to make it right. It wasn't, well, the spec document that you provided me said this and I did that, so it's your fault, so I'll get there like next. It was like, we all just got on a call, we figured it out, we said I'll be there tomorrow. I said, all right, cool, like FaceTime me if you need anything, we need to walk through stuff. You know, we were able to go into the system remotely and run some cycles through the access control system because it's cloud-based, and like, yep, we're up, we're good. And we handled it all as a team. And so like that was like, and the client, you know, we kept them informed to the level that they needed to be. Cause really so the job had to be done by Friday. This was Wednesday. So we said, okay, on Wednesday we had a snag. We'll get it fixed on Thursday. We'll finish commissioning on Friday. We're still meeting our deadline, but we just communicated out to the client, like, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing. This is how we're handling it. And we'll have final commission Friday, and we'll be programmed and everything will be all set. And so that was like, you know, really micro example, but how everyone played their part and no one pointed fingers. And, you know, we all knew that the objective was finishing the job and success to the client. And so the electrical contractor didn't think the objective was run my wires and walk away. And so we all were on the same page from the beginning around, what does success look like? And it made a huge difference. Small project, but big visibility. You're at the headquarters, right? You're there. The C-suite is there. They're going to be using this space. If things aren't done on the timeline committed to and at the level of quality anticipated, then there's going to be issues. And it's the little, in my experience, it's the little things that either stack up and become big things, or the small problems that create the big issues. So, I mean, that's where I think having that type of attention to detail around those types of things, is what drives customer excellence.
Yeah. So I want to dive into a few things. Like and if you're okay with it, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think it's quite obvious just based on like some of the, some of your mindset that you're sharing with us, is that, it's customer first, right? Like you're very driven, it seems like, to really service the customer properly. And I brought up construction a little bit before, and, when I was kind of saying, oh, like I started servicing my contractors like the same way I would service the engineer and the architect and the owner, because that team approach and that concept of, hey, like we're partners, right? Like we're, at least in my mind, like I came to the table saying, whatever it takes, we're going to get it done, right? And a lot of expectation management has to happen. And I was wondering, like, with where you sit now with the end user,
yeah.
like, how do you manage expectations? And also, what does your process look like when you are picking apart and putting together a team? How do you decide who's going to be a part of that?
Right. So the expectations with the end user, and it's funny because now I realize how like ridiculous my expectations were as an end user. Now that I've sat on two different seats on the other side of the table, and you just have to be honest. I'm working on a project right now that's a pretty complex, kind of multi-tiered enterprise deployment of both access control and video. And they're like, yeah, so we have these 3 buildings here. We need this done like, 2 weeks? 2 weeks? And I was like, we haven't even bid it yet. Like, there's some stuff we got to go through here. So so expectation setting with the end user is critical to say, this is the typical process. Here are some expedited paths that we can take, but here are the trade-offs for that. So for instance, like, we can go out and get 5 qualified bids and assess them, and it's going to take this long. We can do that. We can do 3, we can do 2. We have a preferred, provider in your area that, we can identify and do just 1. And then if it's, if we think it's way off base, then we can do more. So it's like, it's having those, kind of results-oriented options conversation, and not just being stuck into like, this is the only way I've ever done it. It's the only way I'm comfortable with. Therefore, it's the only solution that I'm going to provide. The team component, we were talking about it today with the different end user, a couple of my colleagues, as we were moving towards the launch of a project, and they want to move really fast. And so I said, well, then this is what we're going to do. We're going to find a manufacturer and a service provider that can meet our tempo, but have the capability and the integrity. So we kind of have these qualifying, I talked about them earlier, and I think they're still apt, like our values. And there's a values connection that we have with our end users that, they tend to hold those same values in high regard, so that, high quality, on time, integrity, show up, work your hardest, be available, and focus on delighting the customer. We work with organizations who tend to reflect those same values. We also want to work with, team members and organizations, whether they're subcontractors, partners, vendors, whatever, that also reflect those values, because we kind of move pretty quick, and it's not in a way where we want you to just blow past all the process steps that need to be taken. It's still a gated process, but we want you thinking 4 steps ahead, operating through step 2. And so it's the ability to be agile, to be iterative, to learn on your toes, not be master of all things and kind of, I have all the answers, but really be a partner and a cooperator with us. So those are the attributes when you're putting a team together. I think it's like flexibility mindset, and I hate complaining. So like right away, if you're a complainer, I'm like, I don't, there's a difference between, us having a conversation and like, let's take us aside and let you vent and like kick the table for a little while. When we're done, and like, let's get back in the game. So I think like having the right mindset, being a positively, solution-oriented individual and organization, not complaining about things we can't control, and being okay with different approaches and learning and trying things new way, and I'll say selective risk taking, right? So like not like off the edge doing crazy stuff and saying like, yeah, we'll try this brand new technology we've never tried before. It's like I don't want to be a beta tester or a sandbox unless it calls for that. But I also want fresh new approaches and ideas and things that, that's how you bring value to those customers, especially the legacy customers you've had for a long time, is come to them with new ways to do things or what's new for them or things they haven't tried yet that are going to better their situation. So that's what we're looking for, both like internal team members when I'm bringing people from inside Guidepost or want to add to the Guidepost team, and then for partner companies that we would want to work with.
So how do you because you brought up a couple of things also. I can literally probably talk to you, Jon, for hours. There's I have my agenda obviously, but we can go on tangents, and you do bring up something though that's like so important to talk about. And I think it's you mentioned risk taking and new technology and maybe new ways of doing things. And my question for you is, what is your what is, I guess, how do you decide when you're going to take that risk? What is some of that criteria you're looking at? And can you give us an example of, maybe you don't need to mention a specific manufacturer's name, but do you have any tangible examples you can give us of when you did take a risk with technology and how you manage that expectation?
So I have a couple of them. The last one I'll save because I promise it's not like a product plug for you, but it's going to hit home for you. But I'll start the first one. So what really got me on mindset is early in my career, I worked for a company that was very open to new technology. They were pushing the envelope all the time. I'll give you an example. This is probably circa 2008, 2009. So the facility, there was a legal file room, and they wanted to basically make sure that the confidential files that were in there was hard copies. There was decades worth of files in there. They didn't want to pay to have them scanned or anything like that, because they wanted to reference them, and it was growing. They couldn't put a camera inside there because of their concerns with privacy and confidentiality, but they wanted to know, this was a very specific problem. When the site is closed, we want these doors closed and locked. We want to have accountability of who comes and goes, so readers on there. But then when a drawer is open, we want to know, if after hours, if one of these drawers gets opened, what exact cabinet is being opened and who's coming in and what. And so there was all these challenging criteria. So we went to our integrator and said, look, this is what we want to do. And we started spitballing, and we came up with a totally customized, point-to-point sensor, light sensor solution with a beam crossing line in front of every cabinet. And because we couldn't put, they didn't want to change the cabinets, and we couldn't retrofit them with the lock on it was all these crazy parameters we could come up with. So we were just we're just going to figure it out. And we really took an ideation approach to it, where nothing was off the table. So it was let's just brainstorm and see what we come up with, and and like kind of close it down to now what I know is basically a minimum viable product, and let's put it into place. But then it was just this crazy idea on how we make the legal people happy, and it worked. And so, but we had creative licensing in that scenario. And on the other side of that spectrum, you know, I work with clients today in certain environments, we'll say like data centers, right? Or like healthcare, where they may be very risk adverse, and they have their specification and everything is here and it all needs to look the same and feel the same. And you just know, like, well, I may offer them like, hey, here's a new technology you may be interested in, but it's not going to be like, hey, this new data center that you're setting up in, you know, X state, that's like your new crown jewel. Let's try it out there. Because if it doesn't work, like like your ops people are going to be super upset. But maybe it's, hey, in this one cabinet or this one room, this is supposed to be your crown jewel. So maybe try it out here. And then if you like it, then we can put it into your spec or expand it or use it going forward. So, I mean, you really have to match you got to know the risk appetite or the technology kind of willingness to play in that innovation space. You got to know that first, and then match it with your approach to it. You know, conversely, so the example I was going to give you is I was talking to a client today. They have this big open factory or like warehouse distribution center, right? So they have these doors. Their entry point is just two doors propped open. Right? So no access control, no card readers, no cameras. So we're trying to figure out how to do it. And I said, okay, what about this? What if we're retrofitting that with a card reader isn't going to work? You know, they prop it open because it's so hot in there. There's no air conditioning or anything. I said, what if we put a camera that's just facial recognition on everybody who comes in? And if they're in the database, nothing. They're good. All right, John's here, Sarah's here, everyone's here. It just counts them as like they showed up. It gets a face it doesn't recognize. The security officer gets a notification of unknown individual and a picture of it, and then they can go engage. Is this
the example you're saying you're trying to not plug us?
Yes. Yes.
I'm like,
it's not intentionally supposed to be an Alcatraz commercial, but what I'm getting is is having the range of technology in your mind on what's possible, or what's you know, traditionally thought is impossible, but like different ways of doing things, and like again, using technology innovation to service your customers in non-traditional ways. So we just thought about like, hey, you know, what do we really want to do here? Like, you know, we can't lock the doors. If we're going to have them propped, though, what's a different way that we can keep people safe and identify who should be in here and who shouldn't be? Yeah. Right. So you just reframe that problem statement. Yeah. And it goes from, nope, the doors have to be locked, that's the only way, to, well, hey, what about this? And they were like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's give it a shot. So because the alternative is trying to tell the operations people that we got to keep those doors shut at all times. And now we're creating a combative relationship with my end user's client. Because guess who's going to pay for that?
Oh, yeah.
The end user.
You're firing me up right now because you're up, like, and forget Alcatraz right now. Like, you are like speaking to my heart, to be honest, because for so many years, like ever since I had moved into CT with Johnson Controls, which in connected technologies, like our whole goal, like what we did was we opened up the possibilities. Like instead of sitting there and like stumbling over the technology, right, and being so limited to what we can do because of the technology, it was like the opposite. We sat down and we said, what do you need? What are we trying to accomplish? What operational efficiencies can we bring to the table? And let's use technology to do that instead of saying, oh, I'm trapped within this one way of doing it because the tech can't do what I need it to do. And like, I would always use this example, like to my manufacturers, where like when they'd come to me and I was at JCI, like I know people know me. I'm a straight shooter. Like I don't waste time when it comes to like getting things done. And I'm graceful when I most of the time, unless we fail miserably on a job, I'm probably not the happiest. But the point is like is like, I've been burned in the past. I did take a risk and take a chance on technology in the past. There are solutions out there who were some of my strongest partners from a manufacturing perspective, like OEMs that were my strongest partners that I took risks with, and we still failed, and or may have failed or may have made a mistake. But the point is that like it was a partnership and we were willing to get it done, and the end user knew, okay, we're taking a risk. We know it may not be perfect, but we're going towards the right direction of making your life easier, not by stumbling over the tech and being limited by it, but trying to find ways to use it to make life better, right? And making it our friend versus our enemy. And so like, what's just interesting is like, I would say to my manufacturers when they started saying to me like mumbo jumbo, like what I like to call, where they'd say, oh, well, we can't do that. We can do this, we can do that, but we can't do this. And I would always remind people of like the iPhone. And I would say, think of the iPhone, like think of the fact that like Apple has come to us humans, the general consumer, right? And has given us a way into life, like to do endless possibilities. And this is like the Steve Jobs hat in me. I mean, the Steve Jobs in me, right? I'm wearing that hat where I'm like super visionary right now. But like, if you think about what they did, like they gave us a tool, right? It's a tool. The iPhone itself is a tool to get our life, to make life easier. And I think of technology in that way. So like there were times in conversations, Jon, where I would sit there and remember, I'm like the integrator in this scenario. And I would really hold my phone up and I would say to my manufacturer, give me the iPhone. That's it. Like when I started getting that feeling of like, we're limiting ourselves, or you're telling me like about this feature that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, right? Like I get you have a cool product, but like, give me an iPhone, like give me something that's not just going to solve my personal problems, like in life, where like, we want to go to the customer and make it easy and simple and use the technology as a tool, like a tool on our tool belt versus something we have to get over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I spot on. And I think when I was an end user, I was vetting out a number of technologies for a particular security solution, and there were three options I was looking at, and one of them I really liked. But when we were doing a business process mapping exercise, we said, these are the way all of our stuff works. And they said, well, kind of, this is the way our stuff works. And we looked at the gaps and they said, well, it's easier if you change the way you do things to our process, because it'll make our product work better. And I was like, we're done here. Like that's not going to happen. Like it's not going to happen. We're a global company and with dozens subsidiaries. Getting them to just accept to do one thing one way, it was like an amazing effort in and of itself. But then telling them they all have to change to this external vendor's way of doing it because they think it's worked the best was like a total non-starter for me. Now, if they said that, if they even had the conversation a little bit differently to say there's optimization in your process if you tweak it slightly this way and you'll gain these efficiencies. I mean, we were a operational excellence kind of Six Sigma lean manufacturing driven company. So with that language, I could have, first you could have sold me on it. And then I could have sold the operation on it to say that the tack time of this process is going to be 10 times less and have less touch time, and talk that operational language to them. But it was like, no, we don't do it that way. So if you're going to want to use our product, you're going to have to change the way you do it. And like, the ears shut off right thereafter. As opposed to the other companies who were like, look, here's kind of the way we operate. But we'll map to your processes. And yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive because there's some custom stuff that has to happen there, but we're not going to ask you to change a thing, or very minimal things, but you're going to gain these efficiencies. And that is a totally different conversation. And I appreciated them as service providers being willing to change or modify the way they do things. When I I know with technology companies, that's sometimes hard. You don't want to come off your core product because the more iterations you have of it, the more upkeep, the more cost, right? So you want things to stay as simple as possible. But I mean, you look at iPhone, the iPhone operating system and feature updates. The brilliance is in all the apps. It's in what everyone else brings to the table. It's creating for innovation and creativity to happen. And so that's where I think we as an industry stub our toe a bit, because we want the whole pie. I want it all to be mine, as opposed to creating a platform that everyone can plug into and get their piece of, and you become an optimizer of like the whole experience. And I think there's companies that are knocking on that window through intelligent buildings and kind of smart IoT, because they're seeing there's like this value chain through a building or through an enterprise that can be plugged into. And I feel that access control can be the really the nexus of that interface. If you have an access control company that will like let that happen. We're not there yet because they still want it all, right? Instead of just saying like, let us be a platform.
This isn't an Alcatraz commercial. It's an Alcatraz commercial. And like, I'm so, honestly, Jon, like, I will be honest, like I really haven't come on here to Innovation Nation and like said my piece yet, right? I haven't interviewed anyone yet. I mean, I probably will do a solo one soon. I think it's you know, things are brewing, and I feel like it'll eventually be time. But you know, I do think that this is, and I don't, you know, we have our part B coming, which is great, because I think this is like the perfect way for us to kind of like leave a little bit of a hey, like taste into the next episode, right? Because we're now talking about tech and like what we can do with it, and like our next episode, I'm not going to tell anyone or mention it right now what it's going to be about, because I want it to be a surprise. But it is so cool how this industry is changing so fast, and we're talking about it, but I think I have a very good feeling things are going to change even faster. Like give us the next 6 to 12 months, especially what's popping up in the technology and where we're going. I mean, because of Corona, like I'm not going to say like I'm very thankful that Corona has hit, like I'm not, but there are so many silver linings right now, because I finally am getting that feeling that people are opening their eyes and they're starting to realize, like, you know, maybe I shouldn't do it all. Maybe I should go partner and let's get this done as a team and get it done right. And it also plays into this whole concept of integrators and how like they harden security systems, and they think like, oh, well, I need to own the whole pie. Like why can't I go down the street to my integrator friend down the street? And if they're really good at Genetech and we're really good at like Silox or whatever it is, and the end user wants Genetech and they want Silox on ACS or whatever. I'm using Silox as like it just first thing that came to my head. Like you could think Brevo, right? Or whatever. Like Silox is an older solution out there. But you know, I'm saying like if we have like a Brevo and we have like a Genetech, and these two integrators happen to be really good at each, why can't we just come together and get it done as a big happy family? Why does it always have to be so, not just on the manufacturer side, like, oh, well, we want to do it all? Why can't it be also the providers themselves, which ties back to the customer service topic, right? Why can't we find a way to make this world a better place? Like, not to be cheesy, but like, I will be honest with you, like coming from mechanical and like working and building automation the way you kind of just said, which gave me, I've never like, you gave me this epiphany of like how access control can kind of be like that way in, you know, to like the quote iPhone of buildings for security, right? And I could not agree with you more. And it reminds me of building automation. Who would have thought that the controllers on air handlers and the interface that you're looking at was going to be that, right? Like, I don't think the HVAC guys or, you know, Mr. Johnson back in the 1800s when he created a thermostat, I do not think that guy thought he was going to open up a world to possibility with technology. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't want to be naive to the you know, business environment of growth and shareholder value and all the things that drive a lot of the innovation is, you know, kind of the capitalistic machine, and, you know, you have stakeholders and shareholders and executives. Like, I've worked in that environment in large publicly traded companies where you're literally, you know, tracking output on a daily basis, and end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year. So that's all well understood. I think there is a, you know, strategic decision that can be made by organizations to decide how to optimize themselves in strategic partnerships and alliances, and knowing where you're good and really, you know, unleashing your capabilities in the areas where you excel, and finding ways to work with others who do what they do really well. And ultimately rewarding the end user, the client, with the best service possible. So there is like a way to balance growth and opportunity and be good stewards in the industry, and really have both sides of that. I think, you know, we chase after everything because we want to grow and we want to be successful. You know, I think that's corporate and maybe personal people too, right? You think about like us as individuals, you want to grow, you want to, you know, get into bigger roles with fancier titles and bigger compensation and all that. And I think, you know, asking yourself what you're not going to do as a person or as an organization, or really not just asking yourself, but like really asking your things like, is this worth my time? Is this a space I want to get into? Am I going to be able to perform here? Or am I going to take on something and then fail, and that's going to make me look bad and impact me in other ways? Those are all thought processes where, you know, you should be continuously looking at how what your strategic portfolio looks like, both as a human being and as, I think, corporations and organizations in the marketplace.
I think I feel like we're just getting started. Like this, there's so much that we can talk about, and maybe it's going to be an A, B, and C episode. Maybe we're going to have to.
It could be.
John, it's a great, I think, place. Like, we can bring it full circle. We can wrap it all together and say, you know, like, I think it's a really good topic we talked about, because a lot of it was related to like mindset, right? And we're talking about changes of the industry and technology, all these things, which is, you know, if we want to, you know, we can leave it at this point, right? Like with technology and where we're going now, right? We've talked about customer service, how we can do that better, how we as an industry can evolve, change, and what we need to do. And now, you know, as a sneak peek to the future, just so the listeners know, we are going to, in our next episode, we are going to break it down now. We're going to get more technical in the next one. And Jon, our SME, is going to talk to us about a few different, you know, innovative technologies that we're seeing today in the market. I'm not going to name the exact ones yet. But we're going to demystify a lot of it now, right? Because we talk about, instead of hurdling over or like having to get over the hurdle of tech, how do we use it as our tools now? How do we use it to then be the better service provider? So I'm excited for the next one, Jon, because I think what we just talked about was a really good preface and, you know, starting point to the latter conversation. And I'm excited that you're going to come back with me next week, and we're going to keep it going.
Likewise. Appreciate the opportunity.
Any thoughts or just closing comments that you'd like to make for this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing for me is just kind of a call to action for the industry around how we interact with each other and how we kind of service the industry as a whole, and how we do that in a more cohesive, positive, collaborative, and cooperative way. And really what matters is that the final users of our services get the best experience possible. And so that we as an industry are seen as the most valuable asset around. And so I think that's that's my request for anyone who's watching this, to anyone who is interested in the industry or has been in the industry for a long time, is kind of know that you're representing more than yourself when you're interacting with folks. You're representing an industry, and we want to make it the best place possible.
I agree. And I think that's a wonderful place to leave off. It's a call to action. And I will just say, for those who do want to meet Jon, Jon, where is the best place for folks to get in touch with you? LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn, or if you go to the Guidepost website, you can just search up under our experts, you can put in my name and get my information and contact that way. Amazing.
And then I'm excited. I'll see, we'll be back for part B. It's going to be a fun one, and stay tuned, right?
Likewise. It's going to be great.
Thank you, Jon.